Hi there, Johnny here from johnnylipsonstudios.co.uk, and welcome to the Songwriting In Depth Series, where we are going to be looking at my song Paper Deity from my EP Belonging to Tomorrow, which I released in last May in fact. And this first episode I've kind of titled Vamps and Narratives. The reason why I've done that is because we're going to talk about the very first building blocks that I put into place for writing this song. And this is generally how my songs take shape as a whole. It's a kind of methodology that I kind of fell into many years ago. And it's kind of worked for me. Sometimes songs kind of work themselves out in different ways, but this is the most regular way in which a song works itself out for me. So that's where we're going to go with it. So up on the screen, you've got the lyrics to the song, which we're going to look at in a bit more detail in just a minute. But first of all, I want to get to where I start first of all with a song, which is usually at the piano. I have plenty of ideas that whirl around my head all the time, and occasionally I get some time in my day to sit down at the piano and spend a bit more time with those ideas. One of these ideas that I had really clear in my head was this little vamp, which I'm going to play at the piano in just a second, and it just really sparked this. The more I thought about the idea, the more I thought, yes, this is going to sound so cool. And at that point, I had no idea what the song was going to be about. So at this point, I had no narrative. I had no idea of the lyrics of the song. I didn't even have a title. So I just sat down at the piano, and this is the little vamp that I came up with. So we're in the key of D for this song, although it does kind of wander about a little bit. Even in the verses, it wanders about a bit. So I'm going to show you that just now. Getting my headphone cable caught up. Hang on just a second. Typical. Okay, so it started out with this vamp in the key of D. And it had a really simple little bass thing that went with it. And it kind of goes like this. So it's kind of like a C major 7 over D going to a D9 chord. And just kind of like going between those two, and it has this little rhythmic figure in the second bar. Which kind of goes, in that second bar, it kind of goes in between what the kick drum and the bass guitar are doing. Certainly that was the idea in my head. The idea in my head for the drums was a very straight rhythm. Originally, I think I had kind of like a 4 to the floor on the kick drum kind of idea, and a good strong backbeat on the snare drum, but otherwise really, really straight. And that kind of oscillating between kind of like a D6 9 chord back to the D9 chord. I'm really just moving my thumb and little finger. And it just kind of adds just a little bit of forward motion. And I really quite like this little vamp. And I thought, well, that's great, but it needs to go somewhere. So for me, when I'm writing a song, it always starts with the music and some kind of groove. So I might have a clear idea for a drum groove in my head, or a fat little bass part that I might play on my fretless bass. And that's, kind of where it starts. But more often than not, it starts with an idea in my head, which I then work out at the piano. So once we'd got past those 4 bars, doing this twice. I thought that's all well and good, but I kind of need to take this somewhere. So the next 4 bars are kind of a little bit interesting. I can't really explain why it goes in this direction, but it just does. It just sounded good to me. So after these 4 bars, we drop down a semitone to this really quite interesting sounding chord. So what do we got there? We've got A flat major 7, and we've got a D flat in the bass. So you could kind of call it, well, you could call it A flat major 7 over D flat, which is easier to write down. But if you really wanted to be like me, quite nerdy about it, that G natural is kind of like a sharp 11 of the D flat chord, but there's no third in the chord. So that kind of G wants to resolve down, which it does, but not on that chord, which I'll show you in just a second. So what it does is this. There's your resolution on the next chord, which is a C minor 11 chord. And then we go F13 to G flat major 7. Now somehow that G flat somehow resolves itself back on the D11 chord. Mysteriously. I'm not quite sure how it does that, but it kind of does. So we kind of go around that those 8 bars twice. So I'm going to stop there, because the next bit is what we call in arranging terms, we call the next bit a second time bar, because the first time we've gone F13 up to the G flat. Now if I keep going round that, then we're going to kind of get stuck in this never-ending cycle of 8 bars. So I wanted to do something a little bit different for the second time round those last 2 bars. And I kind of knew, yes, I want to go back to that D9 chord because I like it, but I wanted to mislead the listener a little bit into thinking that they've gone somewhere else, which is kind of what I do with my songs. So what I did was this. So we have F major 7, and then we have this E11, E flat 11, which takes you to the D9 chord. So we've not changed key, but we've arrived back on that D9 chord. But it sounds like we've changed key, but we haven't. So this little figure, it has a descending bass line. So you've got F, E, E flat, down to the D. And in jazz harmony, which is a lot of where I get a lot of my harmonic concepts and ideas from, we call that a tritonal substitution. So the chords are substituting for other chords which are 3 whole tones away. And they work because they have at least 2 notes in common with the chord that they're substituting. Kind of like in a rugby match or a football match, if you want to substitute one player for another, most oftentimes you will replace like for like or similar for similar. And that's why substitution works in a football match. You give, somebody that's been on for 80 minutes of a 90-minute match, and you bring fresh legs on for 10 minutes. And they've been sat on the bench for 80 minutes. And they're ready to go. They haven't expended all of that energy. But what they have in common is they have similar skills, and they play in a similar position. So you get them in. Same thing with tritonal substitution. In fact, any other substitution, because any chord can substitute for any other chord, providing they have at least one, if not two, notes in common. Or notes, chord tones, whatever. You can call them notes, you can call them chord tones. So in this case, this E11 should be E minor, because that's the normal progression if you're going to a D chord. I'm not doing that. I'm kind of doing this. It's sneakier, snarkier, and I thought it was kind of cool. And that sets you up for the chorus. In the chorus, I change up the rhythm and make it a little bit spikier, a little bit funkier. And I also simplify the chords a little bit. I actually had, for the chorus, I had a whole bunch of chord changes, which is what I do. I kind of write lots and lots of chords. And I ended up stripping out most of them. And this is what I ended up with. So basically it's the same 4 bars repeated twice. And it's simple. And I basically wanted the music to get completely out of the way of the lyrics of the chorus. Even though at that point I hadn't actually written the lyrics of the chorus. But I knew for this particular song style that I was kind of going for, that it was important that I got my music out of the way of the lyrics of the chorus, because they are the money part of the song. Really crucial part of the song. So, kind of like the verses are kind of storytelling, narrative and all of that. The chorus is your punchline. So I wanted to give it a nice punchy, spiky, funky rhythm, but give plenty of space. So I didn't want to clutter up things harmonically. So all we've got really is the D9 to a G13 up to B flat major 7, and then I've got these 2 chords here, which is kind of like an F over A to a G over B climbing, which allows me to go back to the D and then back around that again, and then we get back to our original vamp. So we get back to that idea, except with a slight twist. So the vamp between the chorus and the next verse goes like this. And then you're into the next verse. So we've kind of looked at the verse and the chorus. There are 2 other really important sections of this song. I have a bridge section. So the basic structure, the form of the song is verse 1, chorus, verse 2, and then into the bridge section. The bridge section is in a completely different key altogether. And then we have a solo section, which is in yet another completely different key. And actually there's a little bit of a surprising way in which I navigate those keys. And the idea is I'm leading the listener on a little bit of a journey away from the song, and then I'm going to bring them back into the chorus so the chorus has impact. That's the general idea. So let me explain how I get to this bridge, because the bridge is in the key of E. And it's a little bit, it comes on the back of that vamp that's in between the verse and the chorus and the next verse. And what I'm doing is, in that vamp, we have the D11, D9 thing going, but then we go to that F over A and the G over B, which is what was in the, that's in the chorus. So I'm using those linking chords. But this G over B, I realized that B leads to E. Because it's the 5 of B. So I thought, aha, I can go to the key of E major and nobody would notice. So that's what I did. So we go F over A, G over B, E major 7. And then I lead you on a merry little dance through some vaguely related major 7th chords. So we go E. In fact, these chords in the first 4 bars of this bridge, they are all related by either major thirds or minor thirds. So the first relationship is E major to G major, which is an interval of a minor third. So very definitely minor third. And what makes that work is this F sharp constantly at the top here. Binds those 2 chords together, even though they are not directly related to each other. The next thing that happens is we go up another third, but this time it's a major third. So we're going E to G, then we're going to B. So far our bass line has gone E, G, B, spelling out an E minor chord. Spelling out an E minor chord. Okay, so we're going E to G to B, and then we're going to go down a minor third to A flat, and then back down a major third again, back to E. Alright, so our bass line has gone E, G, B, A flat, E. So we've spelled out a E minor, and then E major backwards. Okay, this is kind of a little bit of a harmonic direction that I've been going through over the last couple of years. Now I know a lot of the people that watch my videos are into much more traditionally related chords, like G, C, D, A minor, E minor, you know, those kind of 4 or 5 chords that are all very, very closely related together, and they all work together. And some of the best pop songs, rock songs, jazz standards, they've all been written with those chords in mind, and they work brilliantly. But as I've been exploring harmony more and more over the years, I've come to find that there are, if you kind of open yourself up and expand yourself away from those kind of chord changes to other intervals, exploring other intervals, like in my case, I'm exploring major and minor thirds at the moment, you find that you open up a whole harmonic world that you didn't know existed. I mean, obviously I'm using extended chords like 13ths and 11ths and major 7ths with sharp 11ths, those kind of things. Yes, I'm using that kind of harmonic palette, but when you kind of position them, root them on chords that are related by either major or minor thirds, you find, excuse me, you find that you have a whole range of harmony and a whole range of key centers open to you and available to you that you didn't have before. Now obviously that then means maybe that melodically it's a little bit more of a challenge, but you can still keep your melody simple, which is what I've done with this song. The objective with my songwriting is to keep the melody simple so that A, I can sing it, and B, so that the listener will engage with it. And my next objective is to make the harmonic content of the song rich and variegated, to provide interest, because I want to give the listener other things to listen to, not just my voice, and other things to engage their ears with, so that the whole song, the whole package is very engaging. That's my idea. So going back to this bridge, everything here is related by thirds until we get to the end of it, which I'm going to show you. So the first 4 bars are spelled out, as I said, E minor and E major in reverse. When we get to the next 4, we get this climbing thing going on, because I'm climbing up into the solo section for the the tenor sax player. And I'd always had in mind for this song to have a tenor sax player. And Roger Key, who is the tenor player on this record, he just nailed a beautiful solo. So I needed to set him up. So we have this climbing bass line, and I'm going to show you because it's sneaky. Because I was telling you earlier that the bridge is in E, but the solo section is in E flat, which is a great key to play on a tenor saxophone. Makes it nice and easy on the fingers. So I wanted to get from the key of E to the key of E flat in a subtle way. So this is what I did. So I went E, climbing up to G flat, keeping that major 7 thing going on. Then G11, which is kind of like F major over G. Shift that up a tone. Now naturally, your ear wants that to go to D. Your ear thinks that it should go back to the key of D. And I could have done that. I could have done this. And back into that familiar vamp. I could have done that, but I wanted to make it easier on not just my tenor player from the standpoint of it's easier to get around the horn, but also because in the key of F major, which it would be for the tenor, because you write upper tone for the tenor, the horn just sounds nice and rich, and that's what I wanted for this solo. I wanted to get the best tone color that I could get out of the tenor sax. So I thought about this carefully. So I could have done something else as well to lead to E flat. I could have done something more obvious. I could have done this. E, G flat, and then I could have gone A flat, B flat. But it doesn't really work. Kind of works, but it's that the issue for me anyway, for my ear, is this G flat to A flat. And for me the problem with it is that it uses almost exactly the same notes. The only note that changes is the G flat to the A flat. Yeah, kind of, it's weak. It's weak harmonically. So that's why I went to the G to the A, which should lead to D7, back to the D vamp, I should say. But I interrupt it and just go straight to E flat like this. Alright, so that's the original vamp that keeps coming up and around, by the way. It's kind of like the connective, what I call the connective tissue of a song. is to have these little vamp ideas that just keep coming back around, and keeping the listener engaged. Oh, that's something familiar. I heard that earlier. But this time I've transposed it from the key of D to the key of E flat. Now, we're stuck in E flat, which is a semitone up from D, so I'm going to have to figure out a way to get back so I can go into the chorus to finish the song. Originally, I had the second chorus in E flat, but actually it didn't sound right, and it was also a little bit harder to sing. And it just didn't sound right to me, so I wanted to bring it back down. So this is the little device I used, and it's it's an arranging trick that dates back to probably the 1930s, maybe early 1930s. So we'd be talking around about the time of Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn, Cole Porter, Gershwin, Irving Berlin. And this is kind of an idea that I borrowed from Billy Strayhorn, the arranger who did a lot of the arrangements of Duke Ellington's music for his big band. And, they kind of pioneered a whole sound that had never been heard before in music. So I kind of borrowed this little idea. So we go the vamp, but this time in E flat. And then we go down a tone, and you think I'm going to play the same figure, but in D flat. But I didn't. Instead, I stay on that, and then I go down to C13 with a sharp 11. I'm keeping that F sharp there for a good reason, because it binds the next couple of chords together. So then we go down to B minor, and we've heard these chords before. There's that E11 to E flat 11 thing again that we had before, which leads you nicely into that D9 vamp for the chorus. And then, of course, I have the out vamp at the end of the song, which is basically the last 4 bars of the chorus over and over again. The D11, so it's that vamp between the verse and the chorus and the next verse. And I just use that, and we'll go round and round and round and round and round of that, and Roger just keeps on blowing. And in fact, when I tracked out all the guide parts, I thought, I'm going to give him, 7-8 times round that. That should be plenty for him to blow over. Well, he just kept going. So I had to do this little fade out at the end of the song. So that's basically the harmonic background to the song, and there are 2 rhythmic ideas that go through it. You've got this. So that's kind of like rhythmic cell A, if you like. And then rhythmic cell B would be in the chorus. So those are kind of like the 2 rhythmic devices that I keep bringing around and around and around again, and I use them in different ways, particularly the vamp. That gets used in a couple of different ways and in a couple of different keys. But the idea is that these are things that you can hang your hat on when you are the listener, as well as the songwriter. They are things that I can use again and again and again. And it just means that I speed up my songwriting process. Okay, now I've had these lyrics up for a while, so you've had plenty of time to have a look at them whilst we've been at the piano and stuff. So I am going to get me and the piano a little bit out of the screen so that we can devote more screen real estate now to the words. So once I had tracked out the basic idea, which was the piano vamps, and I just basically laid down this simple drum loop and a rough guide bass part that just goes through all the chord changes, I then did a little mix down in Studio One and made an MP3 out of it, and I put it onto my phone, and I took it to bed with me for a couple of nights. I just had it in my ears with my eyes shut. I lived with these vamp ideas for a couple of days, by which time, as I've lain there with my eyes shut, you know, kind of like the ideas of a story, of characters, of people that I can populate the song with start to come into my head. And then the next time I'm in the studio in my blocked out songwriting session, I sit down and I start to get these characters together and I start giving them some flesh, much like a novelist would do. You know, they have like a sketched out idea and then they start to flesh it out, which is what I did with this. And so kind of like the thing that kept coming into my head, and it was certainly a lot in the news at the time, and that was of, you know, the financial situation around the world, and just got me thinking about how much we depend upon money. And it got me thinking about, you know, how, you know, just a few of the, you know, a small percentage of the world population owns so much of the world's resources. I'm not wanting to be political particularly. It's more observational. So I thought, you know what? A tiny percentage of the people own a lot of the world's resources and are fantastically wealthy. Now, you know, you might be sitting there thinking, well, you know, I'm maybe not fantastically wealthy. But if you've got a house, roof over your head, food on your table, bills paid, you have a car, you have reasonably good quality food, your kids are going to reasonably good quality schools, you're wealthy compared to the vast majority of the world. And that kind of, you know, those kind of ideas started spinning around in my head, and I thought about, you know, kind of what's going on in the banks, and I just thought, you know what, this is ridiculous what's going on in the banks at the moment. So I started to write about that. So let's have a look at the first verse. Here we are. I had this story in my head. In fact, I've got two stories in this song because there's only two verses. And the idea was I wanted to just give snapshots. It's what you call fractured storytelling. And so I had two ideas, and I thought these could either be two separate songs, or they could be just like, you know, two plots within the same story. So that's what I went for. So this first story is from a banker's point of view. Well, it's actually from somebody observing a banker's life. So we start with another grey suit flashes past the window on the 13th floor. One more sad life crashes, broken by the yearn for more and more. So basically what I'm describing here is kind of this idea of acquiring more and more things, more and more money, and then you have to work harder and harder and harder and put in more and more hours to get the more and more and more and more. And that can do strange things to your head, to your state of mind, to your emotional well-being, and it can and has, in certain circumstances, led to suicide. And I suppose I'm particularly thinking of certain historical events like the Wall Street crash of 1929. I'm also thinking about the what was termed the credit crunch of 2008, and the ongoing apparent need for austerity, and what that does to people who are in the financial industries. As they find that, all of that money that they acquired no longer has the same kind of value it once had. So, and, the fact that, you can be fabulously wealthy and then suddenly it's all gone, or it no longer has that kind of value that it once had. So that's kind of what the first verse is all about. And the fact that it can turn just like that. 1 minute, everything is going fantastic. The next minute, it's gone. And you've lost. And that's, to me, what, this kind of thing with money is all about. And you don't have to be fabulously wealthy to be in that position of acquisition, of chasing the more and more. It depends upon what your threshold is, what your aspirations are. You can still have this problem when you're chasing after small amounts of money. You don't have to be chasing after millions and millions and millions. So the next bit goes on, another spin of the wheel, roll of the dice or ace on the turn. So I'm using gambling terminology here. Another spin of the wheel, could be to do with, in my mind I had this roulette table going around in my head. Roll of the dice, which is what you would do. And then ace on the turn is a poker term from high stakes poker, Texas Hold'em poker, which I have played, by the way, but I don't play for money. Do you beg, borrow or steal or trade your soul for bands to burn? So I'm using a little bit of slang here. Bands is a slang term for a wad of money. And the fact that you can, bands to burn would be, in my mind, I'm thinking of, throwing your money around, basically saying, oh, I'm having this, I'm having that, I'm having this. Oh, I'm going to go to this expensive place. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that with money. And you're just throwing money at various things. So verse 2 is kind of a little bit more kind of like, hey, here's me. This is me with my life. This is what we should do with it. Let's go out and flash the plastic, blow it all on hot girls and wheels. So buying cars, going out with, apparently classy, flashy girls. Let's do something drastic in the morning we'll never feel. This whole thing of, just going out and having crazy nights with no apparent regrets. And then I flip it almost in an instant. The second half of this verse. Where were you on Black Wednesday? Stood for hours outside the Northern Rock. Still hungover from Tuesday. Must we take this banker's crock? I've changed the narrative position. So I've gone from, hey, let's go out and splash all of this cash we've got. And now I'm talking from the everyday person's point of view. Where were you on Black Wednesday? I was stood for hours outside the Northern Rock, which, if you don't know what that is, in the UK there's a banking organisation called Northern Rock, and they famously had a massive financial meltdown to the point where the government had to buy them to keep them running and to keep the customers' money invested in that bank safe. And they are almost the bank, I think, is almost at a possession where they can be returned to private ownership. I think they're still owned by the public. Still hungover from Tuesday. Must we take this banker's crock? Must we take the fact that bankers are chucking all this cash around willy-nilly and making a mess of things for our lives? It's selfish ambition. That's what essentially this song is all about. Selfish ambition and worship of other things that are not important. So then we get on to the chorus. If I can get this to scroll down. Here we go. In God we trust, it says on the bill, from boom to bust, may give a thrill. It can steal your life, dominate your goals, make your trouble and strife, seek another soul, this little paper deity. This is the crux of the song. This is what it's really all about. On the one hand, the United States dollar bill says, "In God we trust." Which God is it talking about? Well, it could be argued that the dollar bill itself could be regarded as a god, a deity, something that we chase after, something that we hanker after, something that we want to covet sometimes, or that we spend a lot of our time with. Something. Basically, anything can be a deity in your life. It doesn't have to be associated with religion. Anything can be a deity. A football team can be a deity. A rugby team can be a deity. Your hamster can be a deity. It depends upon your level of devotion to such things in your life. And that's essentially what I'm saying, But in this case, I'm using money as the example. "In God we trust" says on the bill, "From boom to bust may give a thrill." Boom to bust. We hear that a lot in the news. May give a thrill, but it can steal your life. It can dominate your life goals, your ambitions, your aspirations. Make your trouble and strife seek another soul. If you're British, you know what I mean by trouble and strife. If you're not, I will explain. Trouble and strife, rhyming slang for wife. Make your wife seek another soul. Yeah, money can do that. Money can be a relationship breaker. It can break your heart. It can break your life. And it never delivers as advertised. Even, you don't have to be chasing a lot of it. If your goal is, hey, I just want to earn $30,000 a year. That's my goal. Because if I have that $30,000 a year, that's more than I have now. I only have $15,000 a year, for example. It doesn't have to be a massive amount of money that we're talking about. So that's the crux of this song, and I decided I was going to write a slightly sarcastic song about worship of money and give it a funky beat. And that's essentially what Paper Deity is all about. So in this episode, we have looked at the lyrics, we have looked at the bare bone essentials of the chord changes, some of the rhythmic ideas that I used, and in the next episode we will develop these ideas a bit further. We'll go into the arranging, the instrumentation, and in further episodes we will look at the recording process, and then the mixing process, and finally the mastering and releasing process that I did for this particular song to make it really come together. So I hope you found this video helpful, hope you enjoyed it, and I really look forward to seeing you next time on the next video in this series. So until then, bye for now.